Just before we get started, I just want to recognize this is the National Day of Remembrance and Action of Violence Against Women. And it's the 32nd anniversary of the murders that took place at Montreal's École Polytechnique. So we just want to remember to keep fighting against violence and bullying in our communities. And I know this council will continue to focus on that as we move forward. Well, thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Okay, could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harrison. All in favor? Thank you. I'll just call on CEO Becker then to please introduce our first guest.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I'd like to introduce Donna Allard, who is the Manager of Regional and Industry Relations with the Alberta Jobs, Economy and Innovation South Central region. As the town continues to focus on economic development, Donna automatically comes to mind with her experiences and connections. Donna is a strong voice, especially for that of the Central Alberta region. Our preliminary findings of the forthcoming economic development strategy demonstrates a focus on investment and targeting public capital investments, mobilizing local investments, and investment readiness. The question posed to Donna in advance of council's meeting was to how can the town, community leadership, and stakeholders such as ECDEV and trade be leveraged to impose the health of local markets? So really a big pie in the sky type of a comment, but Donna's got, she knows what that means when she's posed those types of questions. So just trying to bridge council with Donna and have a conversation. So welcome, Donna.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bates. All the newly elected and re-elected council members, it's not an easy task, and I congratulate you and thank you for putting your name forward for such an important job. Does anyone have any objections to my taking off my mask? Okay. Always feels a little bit better. Okay, so town of Innisfail. I go back a little ways, and I think it was one of the first places that I had the opportunity to sit with an assistant deputy minister to convince or work with Johns Manville on keeping a line here. So it goes back a little ways. I remember that nice little luncheon as we schmoozed without anything really in our pockets, but the can-do attitude of this community as to why they should, put that new line here. That could have gone anywhere in the world. So I've known for a while that it's a place that you can always count on for the community to come forward. Location is as good as any. You've got strategy of that on your side, and you have the catchment area. A lot of people say, well, Red Deer's the hub. Well, everybody is the hub, and the spokes go out because you're like driving to another neighborhood in any major center that an investor would come from. So never forget that you are the center of your universe, and you've done a great job here. I know some of the conversation that we had back and forth with Karen, with Todd, was about what you're going to do going forward on that whole community investment file. What is there to leverage? And we will get to that, but I first want to go through a couple of things that will help keep up the town's momentum, because you do have some good things that have been coming forward, and you never want to stray too far from where your foundation is, whatever strategies that you're having. So that's where I'm going to move, hopefully, forward on this slide. So first, a little bit about ourselves. As you know, there's been a lot of change in the last while, and our department is no different than any other. We're called Jobs, Economy and Innovation, and that is our mandate: grow investment, attraction, tourism, and innovation in Alberta. We have to ensure that the communities that we want to land investment in are ready at all times, And we also want to be sure that the business retention attraction is the key to foundation for your ecosystem here. And the collaboration that I know you have, both with your business community and out with the other communities in the region to participate in things like CAPE, are very important to continue with that. Recently, a lot of you heard, and I know I forwarded information about the roundtables that were happening when the Associate Minister, Nate Horner, was appointed to our ministry. A little bit of, the progression since July 21. I'm sure it's been drinking from a fire hose for that nice young man. He was sworn in July 21 appointed as the Associate Minister to support Minister Schweitzer. And then by November 5th, he was sworn in as the Minister for Agriculture, Forestry, and Rural Ec Dev. So, why do we care? As the unit that was sort of rural and regional, about 9 of us were starting to get things rolling for him on the roundtables, got everything pulled together for those. And now we're split again to ensure that those continue while we go a little bit back onto the JEI, Jobs Economy Innovation side. And hopefully our counterparts with agriculture and forestry will pick up some of the rural part with us. It is a challenge. There aren't that many employees like myself out in the regions. So, when you get that 10 o'clock, the Premier is going to meet, we need to know who you are and what are the important policies that might be wanting to be discussed if they were to have that visit. So that's kind of the fun behind the scenes. What Minister Horner is now doing is ensuring that the environmentally sustainable resource practices are continuing forward right throughout the province, not just through the rural ec dev side. As you know, as we went into the pandemic, there have been many starts where we're hoping to really go put the gas on. The recovery plan was put in place, and that was to deploy the resources and initiatives to right away keep people going. So you might have remembered things like the Small Medium Enterprise Resource Grant. Hopefully that was taken up by most of the businesses in your community. There was 3 tranches of that. And when that completed, I think the last one was in the spring, we worked into the restriction exemption program. That I'll skip through those slides quickly here, but if any of you have not heard that you can get all your businesses to apply for that $2,000 if they're employing by choice the restriction exemption program, let me know, or you'll have the slides from this. So in the recovery plan, we're working hard to make sure that there's some strategies in place. And our ministry is tasked with that. Here's a timeline of some of the things that have been happening. The most important, I think, is to look at the sector strategies. So those emerging sector strategies are to help us transition. And you've seen the announcements been coming out quite regularly. And there has been funds being put in place through the Investment and Growth Fund to ensure some of those are happening. One of the most important ones was the Alberta Technology, Technology and Innovation Strategy. So that one is tying together some other funds to ensure that we can bring in the Amazons and we've had some very good companies come in from the coast as well. So for $30 million over 4 years to increase that talent pool. There is, for many of the communities, they're having some challenges with their workers having left the oil and gas sector for a long period of time. There is now training available. I'm sure you're connected with Nicole Lorraine, my counterpart, with the labor force and immigration, and she can talk about some of those great programs for transitioning as well. So as we look at the interactive digital media support programs and things like the talent pool that's being developed on the artificial intelligence, and commercialization of some of that. I think that, again, some of that can-do attitude can continue to transition. I know manufacturing is a solid base here. I know, you know, the value added from the agriculture sector are very important here. So the technology ties right in with it and the innovation. We also have within our ministry tourism. It used to get shuffled around a bit, but it's pretty solid now. We have MLA Long, who was put in place on September 2020. And he's the parliamentary secretary for tourism and small business. And as part of budget 2021, the 22 million a year for 3 years was put forward to support the tourism recovery. The 10-year strategy that was announced prior to the pandemic is still in place to double the tourism. So the goals of that are still in place to double the tourism revenue. Right now, we're still on the rebound strategy. We thought when this first came out that we'd be a little further along, but the rebuild is going to take some time. So we're working hard on that. And for those of you, again, who have been paying attention to what's happening in the airspace and the travelers, the announcement of links is another great asset to this area. You're within minutes of 2 international airports with lots of choices. The restriction exemption program, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. So I'm going to skip by those. And so this is a little bit, Todd mentioned, you know, that I'm part of the Regional ECDev services. When we have an investment inquiry, these are the regions that are looked at for the province. And we will take that and we will communicate with each of the communities to try and see if we can have the criteria met for you to do a response readiness. Myself in the purplish area and my colleague Linda in the southwest area, we're both leaving fairly shortly. One, we have the new Prairie Can that used to be Western Economic Diversification, who is very good for the communities. You know, I'm provincial, but the federal has some great resources too, and they're adding 5 offices in Alberta, and Lethbridge is one of them. So she'll be a senior business advisor with them. So that name will change, and my name will change. And because it's coming quite quickly for me, I know that they're going to try and put 2 people in my purple region, and you will remain part of the central region. Because when I started, it was smaller. It's kind of easier to grow the family than to jump in and take over as the step parent. So I think that's what they're going to try and do. And let's keep our fingers crossed. So all of these people that are out there, like myself, we work with the communities on a regional and on a local level. So we want to make sure that you have all of the information to respond to inquiries or all of the information you need to help retain the businesses that are here. So oftentimes the conversation doesn't happen one-on-one. Oftentimes it could be through working through one of the regional economic development alliances. So Cape and Braid are 2 in the region I serve, and they all have folks as well. So if you're interested in looking at a technology or a business that is not a manufacturing entity that is not in this region, you can go through someone like myself or anyone in these areas, and they will gather that information for you and help, you know, make sure that you're connected. We call them rural tours, but really what they are is just making sure that you can go and visit that plant or talk to them about what are some of the key criteria and what are some of the challenges, because that can often happen too. So not just within the province, but through Economic Developers Association across Canada, that is another potential. So a lot of the things that happen sort of behind the scenes with the economic developers, and Ken, I think, can attest to this, is happening, you know, very interprovincial as well, because we're looking for the best practices. One thing about Innisfail that I will always treasure is when welcoming and inclusive communities was not a common word. You jumped in and you were the pilot community for that. That is going to be one of the greatest strengths going forward. Because as we all know, us ladies, I mean it in the best of ways, us female species aren't producing 6 kids. So we are going to be needing an awful lot of people to continue going forward. And having that attitude of wanting to be a welcoming, inclusive community, it's not enough for your manufacturing firms, agro-processing, and the fields and the farms to be bringing in folks temporarily. We're going to need to be more welcoming and inclusive. So you're about 15 years ahead of everybody else, because I think it was 2006 when you first got that going. So if you're ever looking to build on that, again, you can do it through Nicole, through Labor and Immigration, some strategies there, and never hesitate to get a hold of someone like myself to be sure that we get you connected, because there is some funding to leverage there. So whether it be through ourselves, looking at a program, employers are very tapped these days to find the right workers. So we want to be sure that we're there for you, because that's the biggest part of your retention of these businesses right now. So I just wanted to throw that in there. They look like big areas, but they're not. We all know how many communities, towns, villages, cities, and First Nations we have in there. And that's another point to keep in mind is there's some valuable First Nation programs that you can partner with, but you have to be truly partnering with the First Nations on them. I'm sure most of you know that it used to be the Capri. I think it's been 4 names since then, but you know, now that's owned by Ochis. And these are some of the great partner ventures that can happen. Where am I aiming this at? Do I know? It's not really going anywhere. I think so. The computer there. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Okay. So I think I skipped over one. Yeah. So just a little bit for those of you who forget how big you're in the center of. Again, I can't stress enough, when a site selector looks at a region, yes, they might be talking to you, but whether you're driving across the city of Calgary or driving across the city of Boston, they're often looking at travel times. So make sure that you always are inclusive, you know, of talking about yourselves as having access to this population within an hour's drive, an hour's commute. You know, you can't beat the arable land here. You know that there's, you know, major feedstock here on the petrochemical side, or on the oil and gas side for the petrochemical. And the tourism is just starting. You know, a lot of people say we've got all these great assets. I think there are great assets here. I think there's a lot of very easily developable assets that haven't really gotten going enough. Hasn't been enough time and energy put into it. Innisfail is part of the Central Alberta Tourism Alliance, which is a by choice joining in on some things that are very specific for this region, to look at some of those opportunities that have been identified and see if you can get the investment around them. Indigenous tourism goes without saying that there's been lots of funding towards it. And I think that there's some great road trips in this area that's very close to the airports. And people want to land and they want to have these things mapped out for them. You know, I know when I travel, my husband's not that comfortable when I just want to explore. He'd rather know where we're going, and that's most majority. So what are some of the things? We're regional ECDEV specialists. Todd, we actually were managers, but that all got changed this year as well. So there's been lots of changes and that doesn't matter. We still work what's necessary for the communities. And I think that's why they had us all be managers, actually, because there's no OT. But yeah, we just ignore that right now anyhow, because we know what the communities need. So, you know, these are some of the things that we do. I've sat with, you know, the chamber and Clearwater County councillors on a Saturday night in Nordegg, because that's the time that they're available. We've pulled up things to do the business retention, expansion, and investment attraction. And we've put it on a website so that you literally just have to plug and play. What are the questions? Go ask the business when the business visitation is happening. We do have the regional economic dashboard. We can customize the statistics. We've done it for pretty much every time somebody's going around. One of the elected officials is going around. We have to do that in the background to make sure we have these things available. So feel free to ask us. You're the municipal elected official. So what we do it for you as well as for the federal and the provincial, okay? Here's just a couple of things that I pulled off that are on, I think there's, oh gosh, about 15 categories on the dashboard that you literally just put in Alberta Regional Dashboard, and you can have all these figures, even how people spend money and what's the income. Why do we care? Because these are the stats and facts that everybody else is looking at before they come here. So we want to make sure that these are up and available. And you can do it for your community, and you can do it for communities on a comparison chart as well. I know you have local intel, I believe, in place on your website for investment attraction and economic development. And this is where a lot of that info is pulled from. So this is free. The province does this, and they do it in customized regions as well. Some of the business supports in this area, you're a little bit far from the Battle River Innovation Centers, but there's a really good example where 7 communities came together and applied and got quite a sizable amount of funding because they came together and decided that they were going to do some innovation centers. And then I remember one day we had 9 different ministries representatives there, and they're a little off the beaten path. So don't ever say, well, you know, we don't have a provincial office here, because it doesn't matter. I think we met in Forestburg once on a Sunday with one of the ministers. So those aren't things to be holding back. Evening meetings and things for your citizens, if that's what's needed, make sure that you do the ask. Succession matching and succession planning is one of the most important things that's happening right now. I know the demographic is such of the average store owner in rural. I'm talking the 5 and under employees stores. It's a real challenge right now. So there are some supports out there, and they're free supports. Yes, there's not that many doing it one-off, but there's also not that many that are asking right now. There is lots of programs available. Of course, the Center for Innovation and Manufacturing at Red Deer College. I know you've got Janice here. You know all about those things now, Councillor Wing, pardon me. And, you know, the IRAP program, a lot of great things at the fingertips here. And immigrant and Indigenous women in business programs. And there's the new foreign credentialing program as well. So these come out steady. And this, I talked a little bit about how that whole toolkit is available on the website that's part of our ministry's website. We also have on there the whole community investment readiness, how to pull that together. And there's things on the, I think I have here, I should follow my notes, request for information. So some of those, yeah, right here, what makes a good response to the investment, and the fact sheets on qualifying prospective leads. A lot of time gets spent by communities working with someone who has contacted you because they want to do an investment. Whereas if you pull us in quick, we can help you with the due diligence, and we can also see who else is working with them through a dynamic 365 system we have. We work with our counterparts with Invest Alberta, Ag Leads Investment Program, and we can see what's really going on. Because the last thing we want to do, and I know it's happened before, and I apologize, because we don't have a lot of control, when it comes out and they ask for your request for information and you last minute pull all that together, we want to know as bad as you do. Okay, so have they passed us over? Did we make it in the funnel? And these are things that we're trying to refine that process so that we're giving you as much time as possible and ensuring that if you don't have the water, they've been very specific on it. And if you do, that they know you're top of the pile. These are some of the little things. So there's always some facts and criteria that we can help you with, rather than have someone pull their hair out all weekend. We've seen that too. I've been there. And the self-assessment survey, and that's with the community investment readiness. So, as much as we'd like to say, gosh, if we just, really laid down everything that we know is an opportunity here, and we're going to look at our competitors and we're going to show that competitive advantage, you still got to get out and market it. So we want to know that your community investment readiness has, yes, those things that are realistic, but we can help enhance that by applying some of the things that are done through our own department folks, because we have the whole international side with us, all the international offices, of which we just opened, I think, 3 or 4 more in the States, Seattle and Houston and Denver. Yes, Denver. Yeah, we have some good connections there. And oftentimes the investor is going through a site selector. So finding out which one of these are dealing with, the inquiry that's coming to your town. And Invest Alberta, part of our division within our ministry that had the international office, part of that has been carved off, and it's an independent company, an agency, and they have appointments to that. We have worked hand in hand and will continue to work hand in hand with them, making sure that we're doing joint presentations. We recently did one for the Battle River Alliance because they had a very well identified business case around plant proteins. And these are some of the things that then they can go and truly market those. So I didn't put a lot here. As I said to Todd and Kara, because I'm really not sure, I've had some calls from Factor 5. We often, when consultants are brought in, we're often also providing info behind the scenes, to help them out. We know that there's some pillars set and that you're looking to leverage whatever kind of funding there is or take advantage of any programs, as you should, that are available to you for community investment readiness and building up your ecosystem on business readiness. To have a kind of conversation of any specifics is great, or if you have a couple of questions that you have direct around a project you might be wanting to embark on, and does that qualify? We don't have any specific programs like the community readiness program that we had earlier, the CARES program, Community and Regional Economic Supports Program. There was one more similar type program made available. I think it was fall 2019 that ended prior to the current government coming in, and the next tranches didn't come forward. There's talk, but there's always talk. So I always say, look to what is available. Right now, there are, through Prairie Can, the new Western Economic Diversification, there are those 5 offices being set up. It's not a new, what they did is they carved the Prairie provinces off and made one section. And then they did a BC section, similar to in the East, Atlantic Canada. So I'm really quite excited that they're putting in senior business people there and 5 offices there. So I think there's good opportunity. There are some programs there. Again, there's a lot of a lot of energy going towards Indigenous programs, very, very important. A lot of energy going towards tourism. These are areas that have suffered, disproportionately on the tourism side, particularly, and taking advantage and ensuring that we have that inclusivity going forward, helping with the Indigenous business and the immigration. I believe from the outside looking in, these are areas where you have a lot of strength. And then it just depends the direction that you're looking to go and to build on the businesses that are already here. Now, I think there was some mention about sort of a local cooperative. There had been a program, I know Stetler inquired quite a bit about this, and it's through the Alberta Community and Cooperatives Association. They had developed Unleash Local Capital. And it was, having your own communities investors, similar to the ONET model, how they got things going in Olds. So this unleashing local capital, the process is still available through the Association of Community Cooperatives in Alberta, but the funds that we're going to help kickstart, to my knowledge, aren't there from the provincial, but there could be from other areas. I know there's often been, some angel investors that have chipped in on that type of thing. If they want to get it going, it's a great source to get some of that local investment going. So it really is back to the basics of the business retention, expansion. Find out who's thinking of retiring soon in those businesses in the next 5 years through those one-on-one. You all have those contacts and those close connections, and see what you can do to help mentor folks in. A lot of times that's really what it comes down to. The amount of resources out there to help them are phenomenal. The Alberta Pathways through Augustana College, there's another. Those of you that know of Augustana in Camrose, there's another whole succession course there. And it's for family businesses for succession to folks that are not in the family any longer, which we're finding a lot at that third generation. And the manufacturing, like what's missing in your supply chain, that good old import replacement. And where is it already? In Alberta, hopefully not the other side of the Coquihalla Highway, but and yeah. I guess any questions that you have? I think I've babbled on long enough.
Well, thank you very much, Donna, for being here today. It's been wonderful to finally meet you. And it's interesting that you mentioned welcoming an inclusive community, because our community is actually on version 4.0 right now of,
there you go.
Of that. So it was kind of reignited last year, 2020, it was reignited, and a group of community volunteers stepped forward, the same people that were there originally, Pat Bedart. And
Pat, wow.
Pat, yes, yes, even though she's in St. Lucia, she was here at the time, and
wow.
And she got some people together, and they received a grant, Government of Alberta grant, and have been doing some training and that kind of thing. So, yeah. So it's nice to hear that, because quite often we hear the other side of it, right? That some not so nice things about welcoming an inclusive community. So it's so nice to hear from you how important that is, yeah. Moving forward.
Yeah, Mayor Barkley, the businesses go through so much to bring in the workers, and then the rest is up to community. And there's great models that have been built for how to integrate on the floor and how to integrate in the community. So really good to hear that you're continuing with that.
So just open up, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, and thank you, Donna, for your presentation. It was very informative. The question that I have, you had mentioned that businesses are eligible for the $2,000 if they're participating in the REP program.
Correct.
The question that I have is, what about not-for-profits? Would they be eligible also?
I believe so. Let me just look at my notes. Maybe I can go back to that one. I know I jumped right through them. Yep, one-time payment of $2,000 to eligible businesses, cooperatives, and nonprofits. And the website's right there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You go first. No, I like the presentation because of the cooperative side, as well as talking about the Indigenous travel and tourism. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think when we were first elected, I think one of the things in Innisfail, we don't brag enough. And I said it when we were doing our forum, we don't brag enough. And I think that's something that we should really showcase and get out there for those site selectors, because that's in the positive side of living in a small community. So thanks for presenting today.
You're welcome.
Well, I of course always enjoy Donna's presentations. And so I know that there are some other questions, but I'll just take this opportunity on behalf of my colleagues to congratulate you on an amazing career, on a long time of doing a lot of really good work for communities. For my colleagues, I've known Donna and worked with Donna for over 20 years, which is amazing to me.
I know.
But Donna, in my time with her, has represented every portfolio from finance and enterprise to innovation and advanced education, and always coming back to her roots in economic development and community. So congratulations on an outstanding career, and best wishes to a healthy and long retirement for both of you.
Yeah, I'll probably retire as well as you have, Councillor Wing. Thank you. Very kind.
So in your presentation, you did mention interprovincial.
Yes.
And I had the privilege, let's say, of being one of the first employees at Johns Manville when they did come here back in '76. One of the reasons they came was the attractiveness of both gas and electricity and the rates.
Correct.
And I would hope, to the extent that you can, communicate through to the province, and that those are things that I think have deteriorated as far as interprovincial goes. And I only know as an employee that was hired after they chose to come here, that one of their prime alternatives was Mission, British Columbia. And we helped to put the competitor out of business over there. But I think their competitiveness over there has now come back an awful lot. And those are the kinds of things we have to watch too. Thank you.
Yeah, very important. Thank you, Councillor Bates. And that's wonderful to hear.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I'm trying to figure out how to say what I'm trying to say.
I'm pretty candid. It's okay.
I have a nonprofit. We do a lot of work with immigrants and refugees. So we do a lot of training for them, not only around language, but also around skills that don't have anything to do with technical skills that you learn on the job. And I'm trying to figure out, ways of collaborating and cooperating with other provincial government departments such as yours. And the department that we work with mostly is labor and immigration, and that's where we get our training funds from. So I'm just wondering, maybe this could open up a conversation with you outside of council chambers at some point to see what kind of overlap there might be. Just thinking about now talking about the town of Innisfail, and somehow bringing my knowledge of the other government department in line with your government department that you're representing today. Anyway, I'm just trying to articulate something as I go, and I'm just put something out there. Maybe we can talk after.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Is it Maceros?
Yes.
One of the key labor or key inputs is labor, and we actually have one of my favorite assistant deputy ministers that went over to that portfolio. So we do work very closely, particularly in the regions. I like to say we collaborate better out here than they do in Edmonton, but that's just me. We get to run into each other more. The lines are there in the ministry names, but we do our best to try and ensure that what is needed for the community, you know, you access it through whichever ministry. But yes, working joint, very, very important. So I'd be happy to speak with you more about that and make sure we do that.
Okay, and I'm not sure how much CEO Becker has filled you in about, like we do have a community economic development task force now, an advisory group that is just kind of underway. And I think there's some really good work going on there, of course, with Factor 5 with Eric Burton. And I think we'll see that progress as we go along. We did have a meeting last week that was very informative, but I think there's also some other opportunities happening in the near future. And maybe we can connect with you or whomever, I guess.
Donna 2.0,
but
the next better version.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in the near future to kind of talk about how we can take advantage of what's going on in this community, because I totally agree. I mean, we've got it all here, but you know, there are some barriers to our economic growth right now that we're trying to work out and get that solved. But we would love to connect with you, Donna, or
sure,
or your replacement, I guess, as we move forward. So thank you again for coming.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. And yes, I'll absolutely continue to chat with Todd as we go along, and happy to anytime. Don't need to get formal and have me have to come here.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Okay, I will just finish this. I'll let you do it because I'll probably mess it up. And I apologize, I'm not used to being out and about as much. My blazer's hanging at the office. I went in to print some stuff.
Okay. Okay, so we will move on to 3.2, the energy management. I believe Director Jenkins is going to introduce that for us.
Sure. So we do have Daryl Hill with Train, as well as Kyle Kozowski from Alberta Municipalities via Zoom. And then Daryl has brought someone else with him. I'm not sure. Yeah, okay. So they're here to provide council with the opportunity to ask any outstanding questions, follow up on previous presentations. You'll recall that Train has completed an investment grade audit of all of our town buildings and have provided us with a report of the associated recommended energy conservation measures. So they're just going to give us an overview of that process and be available for any more detailed questions from council.
There we go. Yes, thank you, Megan, for the introduction. Like Megan said, Kyle Kowalski's on the line. I hope he can hear us and contribute. Kyle's with Alberta Municipalities and leading the development of this program as well with myself from Train. Kevin McNamara is from Train. He did a lot of the mechanical and control system reviews and upgrades as part of the investment grade audit. I thought if there's any real good technical questions, I bring Kevin along because he's much more technical than I am. So, well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for allowing Alberta Municipalities to come back and present. We conducted this, thanks very much. We conducted this original study in the spring between March and April and May. So we spent 3 months going through this IGA investment grade audit. We delivered a presentation to the previous council in June, which Mayor Barclay was a member of, and I can't remember how many more were there, right? So this is a great opportunity for us to come back to the new council and re-present our findings. Before I do that, was anybody at the Alberta Municipalities Convention a couple of weeks ago? Wasn't that something? That was being able to get in front of all those people once again. It was a real joy. We really had a good time there. So why don't we start? We've done some introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about the energy management program. We're going to do a bit of an overview of where we are in the process of the 6-step program. We're going to reaffirm some of the goals and objectives of the town of Innisfail to make sure we're still on track to solving and achieving some of those goals and objectives. We're going to present our findings and link them to the goals and objectives that were stated previously. Look at the financial review, and there has been some changes. It's been 9 months since we originally priced this, and everybody knows that with supply chain and inflation, we had to reprice and go back to market while we tried to maintain as close to the budget as we did it back then. And we'll talk a little bit about next steps. So here we are with the energy management program. This is a program delivered by Alberta municipalities, supported by Train as their technical partner. It's a 6-step program. The first step is really about doing a high-level overview of your facilities and your energy to determine if there is really a valid project. And the way that we do that is we baseline and benchmark your utility spend. And what that does, it comes up with an energy intensity per square foot. And we use that to compare similar facilities, whether it's a fire hall, whether it's a rink or a town office. And we can benchmark to see how you're performing compared to peer and high performing buildings. That's the first step. And then that really allows us to kind of drill down and get into each particular building and see where those savings, where the potential, and why there's potentially a disparity between a difference between how your building is performing and how a high efficiency building would be performing. And we'll try to find ways to get your buildings to that point. So we've completed that. That was earlier this year. And then we moved into an investment grade audit, which I'd said was completed and presented in June. Right now, what we're doing is finalizing the scope and contract documents. So as a result of multiple meetings with Megan and Todd and previous presentations, we were able to kind of narrow down the scope as identified in the presentation today, as well as in the IGA, where we really highlighted a recommended project. So once we finalize what that scope is, then we can move forward with delivering some templates and some documents for review in order to move into implementation. We're going to skip financing because my understanding is that it's going to be self-financed through the town. Our financing that we bring with Alberta municipalities, it's not the cheapest financing costs, and we find some of the towns who can get better financing. So as a result, a lot of towns are deciding to move forward with their own financing solutions. Once we get all these documents done, then we move into project implementation, and that's where the tools and the trucks start rolling, and we really start constructing what we've identified as findings for the town. Once that construction is complete, what we do is we move into what we call a performance period, and that performance period, every year we come back and we verify that the savings that we hit are real. And we could talk a little bit about how the guarantee works if the savings are not hit, and we could talk about how it's rectified, whether we overachieve or underachieve in those savings that we project and we're guaranteeing. And if anybody has any questions as I go through this, please just jump in and ask it as we go. So we identify goals. I don't think these have changed, but I think it's important that we come to an agreement that these are still your goals as we develop and implement this project. It's energy costs. Energy costs are rising specifically in Alberta and Saskatchewan as a result of the carbon tax on the electrical grid. The electrical grid is very carbon intensive in Alberta. A lot of coal plants, a lot of gas plants, not a lot of renewables generating at the grid level. And sorry, excuse me. And so as a result, this impact of not only carbon price, but also escalations when they took the cap off the utility rates. We're finding both AESO and Alberta Utilities Commission, they're both forecasting significant increases over the next 10 years in your utility rates to the sum of about 8% annually. And I think that's a little conservative, and that's based on projections that they can bring in all of their green and renewable generation projects onto the grid, as well as the carbon pricing and when is that going to stop. We have projections out to 2030 and the impact that has of not only a gigajoule, but also on a kilowatt hour. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And that's probably one of the key drivers for all municipalities that we're talking to today is, the cost. They want to manage those costs. When you're talking about an increase of 7, 8, 9, potentially 10%, that's well above what a lot of municipalities are currently budgeting for utility cost escalation. But we're finding that's a reality, and we're actually tracking it to actual reports based on the pricing pool, the electrical pool here in Alberta. And even the projections that started 2-3 years ago, they're hitting those numbers all the time, right away, right on spot. If you look at today, I'm going to show you some charts that where we are today is exactly where they projected that we would be 2 years ago. The other thing is technology. One of the things, you have a little bit of technology that manages some of your systems in your buildings. For example, a library, you've got a bit of a front end and some control systems that manage it, but not a lot of linkage between your systems. Some buildings don't have any controls at all. And controls are very important to understand how your building is operating, how your individual components are operating. Because if you don't have that, you don't know if something's starting to go sideways, starting to go off. You can't schedule things. You can't maximize the efficiency of the assets that you have. And really that providing that technology to better manage those assets really has a pretty good payback on it. And even a lot of soft as far as repairs and break fix. So we wanted to address that specifically. The capital plan relief, your third goal or objective. Everybody's got capital plans. Everybody's got shrinking budgets and aging equipment. And you know what we really want to do is this program really brings out some of those items that you would normally have to find capital for and fund to replace. And we try to squeeze energy efficiency and savings and actually have those savings pay for that upgrade. It's a little bit unique about this program. So that's a capital plan relief. And we've identified that we'll talk about some of the mechanical systems that were slated for replacement. Maximize the eligibility potential grants. Of course, everybody likes to have some free money. It's changing all the time. You know, we found out a couple of weeks ago at the show that MCCAC was oversubscribed for their solar grants. You know, we were planning to go to MCCAC to get these grants. And I know Megan's been working quite a bit with some of the other granting bodies, the Canada or the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings grants. Wherever we can, we try to maximize, but they do change all the time. They get pools of new money. They're launching new programs, federal, provincial, municipal programs, and they come and go. And we just try to, but we always have our eyes on the horizon, looking what's coming. We're usually informed right away, even when they're planning to do a new program launch. So we will continue to do that. We'll continue to look at opportunities for funding. And finally, leader in innovative solutions. For renewables, I mean, you guys got a 25 megawatt system out there now, and I saw the video of it about a month ago. It's pretty impressive. I really love the idea of the goats going in and the partnerships with the local community and the farmers. It really kind of shows how Innisfail is leading and really utilizing that property to provide some innovation and some long-term benefits to the community. With this particular project, we actually looked at maximizing the solar on rooftops. We didn't really look at ground base at this point. We wanted to stay focused on the buildings. So that's what we did as far as the innovation was. We're looking at additional PV on the rooftops. Is that, does everybody concur that basically their goals? Excellent. So why now? You know, why do this project now? We talked about, you know, the continual escalation of utility rates. We talked about aging equipment. We've talked about replacing and renewing and refreshing your assets. There's not a better time. If you look at these charts, and this is right from Alberta Utility Commissions, this is the cost of natural gas. And you can see the commodity-based pricing is pretty consistent until 2030. You know, it's around $3. It's going to go up and down a little bit, but that's really what they're forecasting. The impact of carbon, you can see as the top half of it, is really what's going to make the difference in your gas pricing. You know, you're talking about by 2030, it's going to be $12 a gigajoule. Where when we first started this project, it was around $2.60 plus $1, around $3. And today, 2021, it is right around $4.70. I think it's just under $5 today. So you can see how that's going up, and these numbers reflect, they're an accurate reflection of where this market is going. So you can see the impact. If we don't act soon, you know, you're going to be subject to some pretty high escalation of utility rates. Same thing with electrical. This is right from ASO. This is their forecast. And this was done in 2016. It's pretty amazing that if you see the little black arrow at the top there, that's where the pool price is today. And it's right on where the forecast is. So you can see how that's going to continue to rise. And you can look at the cost of energy compared to transmission and delivery. This one, the energy tends to be a little bit higher. And again, that's going to, it's not, the transmission and delivery will remain, I'm going to say semi-consistent, but it's really that energy component, that kilowatt hour, that's going to have the biggest impact on rise as a result of that carbon tax on your grid. So you can see why now? Well, number one, your first goal is reducing your cost. You can see that if we don't do anything, we're going to be looking at a bit of a cliff here with the energy prices. So as a result of that, when we looked at your goals and we looked at kind of, you know, what's happening in the marketplace and what you're exposed to as a municipality, we try to come up with a few controls, or what we call ECMs. ECMs stand for energy conservation measures. And energy conservation measures are a distinct work package within a bigger project. So they generally tend to be little work projects, such as insulating a wall, such as doing a lighting retrofit, such as replacing a boiler. Each one of those, you can measure what the impact of the savings, and you know what the cost is, you can break them out. So when you know what the cost is, and you can actually break out the cost of the savings that you're going to achieve, we call these energy conservation measures. So you'll see ECMs all over the place. That's what that means. The first one that we looked at is lighting and controls. This one is, this is one of the ones that had the biggest changes than what we reviewed this in the spring. When you do a lighting retrofit, there's multiple ways of doing it. And generally the industry standards are either a type B retrofit or type C. And I'll explain to you a little bit about what those are. So a type B retrofit is basically where you're leaving existing ballast above the fixtures. You're disconnecting the high voltage power, 120 volt power, and you're connecting it up direct to the sockets that your new LED tubes are twisting into. That's called retrofit B. Trane was okay with that in the spring, and you'll see a lot of the bigger folks, the contractors that are moving away from it, because what we're finding as the industry matures, it causes some issues. It causes safety issues, potential arcing, because you have this high voltage going into an LED and into the socket, and a potential for electrocution. So about 3 months ago, Trane basically did a corporate mandate that says we're no longer doing any type B installations, only can do type C. So what type C is type C actually removes the ballast, takes a wiring and wires it into a low voltage LED driver, which then goes to the socket that you can fire up your tubes. So C is much safer. You're removing an old ballast. Some of these ballasts could potentially have PCBs in them. There's all kinds of environmental aspects, and you're removing those and putting in it's not called a ballast, it's called a driver, but it does more or less the same function to match the light. It's the safest, most efficient way to do it. But as a result, as you can appreciate, it's cost more. It costs more to retrofit. Also, as a result of this, what we looked at was a lot of them when we could bypass the old ballast and go directly to the tube, it was fine with the existing fixtures. But once you start taking the ballast out, you really got to look at it as maybe it's time to replace that fixture. So with the upgraded scope of the work, we've also expanded the number of fixtures we're going to replace as opposed to just replacing the lighting. So you can see from the original IGA, the cost has gone up on this particular measure. The paybacks is fairly the same. The savings are pretty close. It's gone up slightly. We tried to manage those prices and keep it within your budget, but this is one of them that not only is the scope changed, but the price has increased. And the price increase is not only because of the additional work, but materials. You know, we talked a little bit about supply chain. We talked a little bit about inflation. You know, some of our subcontractors now, they're saying they can only hold the price for 2 weeks because they don't know what's coming in. They don't know what price increase is going to get. It's absolutely amazing trying to plan and forecast some of these projects, because when you've got all these different contractors working and you're managing these contractors and they're saying they can only hold the price for 2 weeks, it's a bit of an issue. Right? So as a result, we reflected some of these inflationary impacts on the project and upgraded some of these numbers. And that's the lighting. And I don't know if there's any questions, if you wanted to ask them after each one of them or wait to the end, but feel free if anybody has any questions on the lighting, or we'll move to the next one. Okay. Mechanical upgrades. So this is one when we talked about some of the goals and objectives. It was about capital plan relief. And the furnaces in the arena, they were slated for replacement. So their budget, and there was some capital budget money allocated, and I don't even know if it really came through on a current budget, but we wanted to look at that and said, okay, you're replacing these. How can we use energy savings to actually help pay for the replacement of that? So what we did is we looked at replacing the furnaces in the arena, 1, 2, 3, not 5 or 4, all these with high efficiency furnaces. As a result, we see a savings of about $5,000 a year. Now, of course, that's not going to pay for $140,000 worth of furnaces unless you have 28 years to wait to pay for it, which these furnaces are lasting about 28, 30 years. So it does fall in line with the age of the equipment, but you really want to have some back end time on it that you can actually see the savings and go to your pocket as opposed to paying for the lift. But this one in particular, when we looked at this, it was $143,000. We took $100,000 out of the capital budget and said, you were going to spend this anyway. What if we injected this $100,000 into this one ECM? And that way you could have $43,000 of it pay for it in energy savings. And it turns out to actually only be a 7-year payback. These projects really do take a lot of the capital. We look at older aging equipment and said, look, you got to replace it anyway. It's end of life. Let's roll in a project. Let's see how we can have savings supplement the cost of that. And this is an example of a measure that does that. Moving on. ECM number 3, this talks about this, that actually addresses, I think it was the second objective about better technology to manage your assets. And this is really about upgrading all your controllers to manage all of your energy consumer equipment, your chillers, your boilers, your air handling units, connecting it all within your buildings and more or less bringing all those so they can function effectively together. And you can set up programs, you can set up schedules, and it's all a brand new front end that the staff can manage and see what's going on, even remotely. They can get alarms on their phones. Did you want to say anything about the controls package, or do you think I'm covering it okay?
Covering okay.
Okay.
As far as the control system goes, it's eyes and ears for your operations staff. Really gives them the ability to be more effective in their roles as well.
I think Tricia will like having this one. Here we go with the PV. So solar photovoltaic. We looked at your arena, we looked at the curling club, we looked at all your town buildings, your depots. Originally, we had planned to have 300 kilovolts of DC power, and that was covering the entire arena. The arena was a pre-engineered building that is, I don't know, about 30 years old, I think, or along those lines. And so we said, okay, it's a pre-engineered, they're not really designed to really support a lot of roof weight. So we thought it's important for us to go out and get an independent structural consultant. And we had the consultant come in, not only look at the roof and what the roof can support as far as load of PV, along with the snow that it attracts, but also we had them look at the internal electrical system. Because a lot of times when you fill up a roof with their PV, the electrical base building infrastructure was not designed to support it. So you might have to upgrade transformers, you might have to upgrade panels, services, everything else in order to manage that. So we looked at the arena, and unfortunately they came back and said, don't put anything on the roof of the arena. So then what we did was we turned around, okay, we know we want the technology, we want to be shown as a leader to put as much renewable generation as possible. So we really expanded out the curling club. The curling club looked like it had a pretty good roof support system. The assessment came back positive. So we maximized the solar on the roof. So as a result of that, it dropped from about 300 kilovolts down to about 200, and from 5 buildings to 4 buildings. As a result, the savings went down, because a lot of times when you're generating your own electricity, that attributes to savings, that you're not drawing energy off the grid, and contributes to financial savings. So the savings dropped a little bit, but the cost dropped accordingly. So luckily it worked out to about the same payback, around 20-year payback. So when we went through all of these ECMs, we really tried to manage it, or try to get it down as close to the original payback and budget that we'd submitted with the IGA. There are some minor changes, but it rolls up to be fairly close given all the external impacts that we had on pricing. Some of it we just couldn't help, but this is one where we dropped a third of the price and a third of the savings. So it kind of works out. The last one that I'm going to show you, ECM5, it's a vending miser. It's very inexpensive. You basically put these on top of vending machines, and they can tell when people walk by, and the lights can go on. It gets hardwired into the socket, and it saves energy. I don't know how many times I walk by vending machines and empty buildings, and they're all lit up, and you can hear the compressor going and keeping it cold. These will actually let the temperature drop, and then when it gets down to a certain floor, it'll actually fire up to keep the temperature up. They ended up saving a lot of money. It's a 7-year payback, but I think there was 5 identified machines that we could put this on. It's not a big measure, but it's just another technology measure that you could show that you're trying to find every which way to squeeze as much efficiency out of your systems as possible. No questions. Okay. Technology, again, this is where we're talking about, we're going to skip this one, because what we did was we took this and said, okay, what's the value of Train IS? And we said, okay, let's look at what the controls package will give us. And, is it that much different? So we went with the controls. We're trying to achieve everything we're doing with IS, except for the reports. The reports will come out annual and just show you on the savings. But the controls will show you how your systems are operating. So I think we satisfied that requirement. Maximizing available incentives. We talked a little bit about this. Again, they come and they go. These firms have been around for a long time, whether that's FCM or Green Inclusive Buildings is the new one, MCCAC. And the way that they work is, you know, they'll go and they'll commit all their money and then projects won't go forward. So some money will come back that they could recommit. And that's what I keep an eye on. And I work closely with these folks to make sure that, hey, you know, we're on a waiting list if a project gets canceled, that, hey, we want those funds, even though you've maxed out your available funds. Additionally, a lot of times what happens when they run out of funds, either the feds or the provincial government will actually pitch in and top it up so they can run a program for another year or two. So we continue to look at that and we'll continue to maximize those benefits wherever we can. We won't leave a stone unturned. And I know with Megan's been working closely, we've been supporting with her and trying to look at every opportunity we have. Hey, Kyle, did you want to add anything? Am I going too fast for you?
Daryl, you're doing amazing. You probably want a break from speaking, but I don't want to slow you down.
On a roll. Yeah, so this is more about our grants. And then we get into the interesting part here.
I have a question if you're feeling left out.
Please.
When you covered the solar specific, the curling rink,
yes,
21-year payback-ish. What's our life projected for the curling rink? Is it long enough to get that payback?
I guess I think we've been told on those steel buildings a 50-year on the external.
So it must be getting close to the two would come together. Okay.
May I have a question too, going back to ECM4.
Yes.
It mentions in there the energy from the panels goes into the electrical distribution grid. Like, is that going back into the building, or do you mean it's going into like a grid?
So the first thing it does is it goes into the building.
Okay.
You consume whatever you can. Any excess will go back into the grid.
Okay.
As part of this installation of solar panels, we'll actually address, excellent, thank you. We'll actually do the applications to the wire service provider. There's a lot of applications and paperwork in order to get put back on the grid. So that's all included in this. It's a full turnkey. We'll make sure that we have the interconnection agreements done and all the regulatory requirements are done in order to get it back.
Do we sell that back to the grid? Yeah. Okay.
The challenge is that, which I don't think is really fair. I mean, they'll buy it back at a kilowatt hour, but you don't get any of your T&D back, your transmission, and which is like half the cost in a lot of cases.
Yeah. And would you see on like buildings this size and this energy dependent, you know, I doubt if you'd ever see a credit, right? Because you'd never, like the system would never be large enough to.
You probably would in the summertime on the curling rink because it's not using anything.
Yeah, nobody's in it. Yeah, well, other than the shuffle borders. Yeah.
It depends on the load, depends on how big of an array you have, but wherever you can. I mean, otherwise, it's just unless you have good battery storage.
Well, I was going to ask that too. Like, is there anything about storage? Like, can you store the energy at all, or is that a whole different?
Storage is probably one of the biggest challenges of renewable energy today. You know, the wind doesn't blow all the time. It's not always sunny. And you've got to be able to store that power. The challenge is that there's multiple ways to store it, but it's still very cost prohibitive. Storage is very, very expensive. You know, they're trying things. They're trying grid scale storage, and there's a big one coming here in Alberta, actually. It might be through some federal grants. But again, storage is very, very expensive. It's coming down quickly, not quite as quickly as solar PV, but it is coming down quickly.
5 years, right?
It's which?
Give it 3 or 5 years.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, great. So here's the meat of it, the financials. A little bit more expensive than what we did in the spring. Budget wise, and it's a reduced scope. It's, you know, it's 100 kilovolts less. Besides that, we upgraded the lighting, so that costs more because it's a new standard of replacing it. You know, those are the mechanical upgrades, are the furnaces in the arena, replacing those with brand new high efficiency furnace. The controls we've talked about, the vending misers, EPC. That's like a project management office, so that's engineering support, project management, procurement, construction, contract management, safety. It's basically running all the trades and running the entire project. We stripped that out and identified it separately here. So that's kind of like what they call a project management office, PMO office. The investment grade audit, that was the one that was done and completed, that you have copies at the IGA audit that we talked about, and that was a set price of 28. That gets, all these get rolled into the project and get paid for through the savings. Communications and awareness. We talked a little bit about that with Megan and Todd and some in the past, and this is really, it's important you tell staff and the town, you know, what you're doing. These are great things and great initiatives, and the only way you could do that is by promoting it. And there's multiple ways to promote it, whether that's dashboards or posters in the rink or signs, or one of the most effective ones that I've seen in a few cities and towns have done is they've taken a little bit of money outside from the savings, and they would have like an energy fair day. So they would go to the town square and they would have hot dogs and ice cream, and they'd give away low flow shower heads. And they usually have a lot of the contractors and vendors that are part of the town, and they would come and support it with little booths and events. And it's more like a family energy awareness day. And that $20,000 is totally up to town to determine the best way to promote and communicate the benefits of the project. The additional one, it looks like there's a line through it, but that's the additional structural and electrical assessment that was done at the arena for the roof, the structural assessment, as well as the electrical upgrade assessment, which brings down to a total project, you know, which wasn't in the original IGA, it was done after the fact, brings down to about 1.387. With savings, I've been reduced from about 90,000 to 83. I want to talk a little bit about the savings, because these are based on 2019 rates. And we saw what the escalation rates are going to be. Unless you have a long-term locked-in contract, you're going to be exposed to some pretty hefty escalations. So that 83,000 from 2019 in today's rate value, I would estimate it to be over $100,000. We know the gas have gone up probably 30% in the last year or two. So we're pretty confident that those are fairly conservative numbers. In order to do the calculations of the payback with the escalation factor, you know, we looked at an 8% utility rate escalation. We looked at an inflation rate of about 2.5%, which is probably much lower than it actually is. And we looked at a discount rate of about 3.5%. And I think you're getting your money for probably that or a little cheaper. So all the numbers and all the metrics and variables that went into the calculation of the escalated payback, we feel are fairly conservative and real. We're not inflating anything here. And it still gives you this project, even though it looks like it's, you know, a 10-year payback, it's got a great return. When we ran this through a pro forma, that $90,000, as it escalates up with the cost of carbon and until 2030, you know, you're looking at probably savings of $3 million, more than $3 million in energy costs, you know, over the 15, 20 years of this project life. And that's where you get to the return on, or the savings to investment ratio. So for 1.3, yeah, it worked out to be about $3 million over 20 years of what you're actually saving in energy costs as a result of this project. Yeah, okay. It's a little different. Last time I was here in June, I think it was 35 degrees out. So it's like a little different today. Oh no. Do I hit the eye or something? Oh, there we go. Okay, next steps. So again, like we talked about that in the six-step program for the Alberta Municipalities Energy Management Program. We're at step 3, which is the final project scope and final contract. Financing, we talked about that's been taken care of. And it's about the project implementation. We think it's going to be about 7-8 months to implement this entire project. Potentially a little bit longer as we do the closeouts and the training and the commissioning. But the sooner that we get the project rolling, the sooner we start realizing those savings. And, you know, that $83,000, if you look at it in today's what you're spending, you're probably, you know, it's probably closer to $8,000-9,000 a month you can save as a result of this project today. That was a lot. And that's all I have. Hopefully there's some questions. Hey, Kyle, did I miss anything?
Hi, sorry, I just needed to be unmuted. Daryl, I think you covered it. I think you covered it really well. I got excited about I think it was the mayor's questions about what I think was leading to maybe questions in a discussion about community energy for Innisfail. But I think that's that'd be great to just kind of continue that conversation down the road. But I think you've covered off really well in terms of like how we present this. Like with Train, you get a project manager, an engineering, procurement, and construction company, a municipal energy manager, and consulting engineer, kind of all rolled up in one. And so it makes sense for us to have them as a trusted partner in this. And yeah, I think I hope it leads to some discussion.
Great, thanks, Kyle.
Any questions? Can you tell us about some other projects? I believe you've done projects in Canmore. Have you? Canmore and Raymond?
Camrose, we're working through a project
okay.
at Camrose.
Okay.
We're still in the development phase.
Okay.
We're still trying to work through getting the project. We're wrapping up or ready to launch a project at the Alberta Municipal Building in Edmonton, which is that project is really going to be a showcase project for this program. So it's very high tech. We have microgrids. We have multiple systems all connected together. We have EV chargers. And in fact, EV chargers today, they still have funding through MCCAC that they cover almost 50% of the cost of an EV charger. So if you're looking at getting one, now's the time to get it before they run out of money. But yeah, it's AUMA or the Alberta Municipal Building. We're in multiple conversations with other municipalities. Innisfail was part of the pilot. And as a result, you're one of the first ones to come through to this stage. So we really appreciate that. So yeah, next year we'll have a whole bunch of them to talk about.
Okay, thank you. And we do have an EV charging station actually over at Equus.
Oh, right.
So, yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, great company.
Any other questions, CEO Becker?
Just maybe a comment, Mayor Barkley. I know we talked a little bit about what's project and details, but there's other potentially opportunities. I know through what is it? RM? No. AUMA. I don't even know what you are, Kyle. Alberta municipalities, as it says, but there's potentially even to talk after the project's rolling out to look at other opportunities for our community or our facilities beyond just the initial savings. Is there other investments that the town can consider to take us further with investment and a return on that investment regarding energy?
Yeah. The conversation continues. This is the first step. But for example, we could be in the middle of construction. All of a sudden, there's a big announcement of some funding for additional ground-based photovoltaic. Well, then let's explore that. Let's expand and see if it will fit within the program and the project. So we have, like I was saying, we always have our ears and eyes open to these potential changes and funding opportunities, and also different strategic opportunities that the town may have. So we want to do another 25 megawatt solar farm. I don't know, maybe, but yeah. So let's do it.
CEO Becker.
Just with the presentation, so we already noticed there's some changes as well. We lost sight of a grant potential, and maybe we're going to gain another grant. Who knows? But we want to make sure council has an awareness of the program, the understanding, the opportunities. Identifying the pitfalls to it, but certainly we have not identified any administratively. We see opportunity with this relationship with AM and Train. But we want to make sure you are comfortable, and if you're not, certainly pose those questions. And then the idea would be to talk later on budget or present to you the budget formally on next Monday, and determine if this is a viable project for your consideration.
Do you see another tranche of financing coming out from MCCAC or?
I used to be at Efficiency Alberta before they did that. And the way that Efficiency Alberta and the province dealt with them at the time was they had to use up their funding first, and then they got another tranche of money. So MCCA is just at the point where they're using up their funding. And I would be surprised if they didn't, but there's no guarantees.
Yeah. Okay.
One more question, remember?
Yep.
Just speaking of the guarantees, can you just speak on that relationship on contract? What some of the guts of the contract, what that looks like?
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that, and how Train as a multi-billion-dollar multinational actually backs up and guarantees what they're saving. So that on a previous screen where you showed $83,000 in savings, that's what we're staking our name on it. We're saying you're going to hit that $83,000 in saving because we're doing financing, we're doing project, we're doing whatever else is required. That $83,000 is real and it has to happen every year. So if you don't hit the 83,000 in savings, Train actually will, first of all, what we can do is we can go in and try to rectify it, find out why not, and try to install stuff at our own cost in order to get the savings back on track. If that doesn't work, then we actually will write a check for the difference. So if we save $75,000, then we owe a check for $8,000 if we can't rectify it. Some years we'll be overachieving. Most years will be overachieving. This is a guarantee, and we don't like writing checks. We've done it. But we usually, there's always a contingency. So when we say there's $83,000 in savings, we're probably figuring there's probably about 87, 88. But we want to put a little bit of a buffer because we don't want to write a check at the end of the day. So they tend to always overachieve. But if they don't, Train will back it up and cover any cost and any shortfall in the savings. And that's our guarantee.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming today. We appreciate the presentation and lots of food for thought.
Great. Well, thank you, Mayor Barkley and councillors. Appreciate it and appreciate your time this afternoon.
Okay.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers. Thanks, Megan.
Okay, thank you again. So we'll move forward to 3.3, Director Vickers with a 2022 budget review.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So administration and council deliberated on the 2022 budget, November 24th through to the 26th for the budget considerations for next year. We did just want to give you guys another chance to do some deliberating potentially now that it's sat. You've had it for about a week. Is there any questions you have or any further changes you'd like to make? I would like to note that I have made a few updates. So one was I removed the cell phone charges. So that put an additional $5,000 onto the budget. And I have updated the water rates to what they actually have passed. So now that's only an 11-cent increase.
Yeah, that's the past first reading. I think it's likely going to get there and we'll know this Wednesday.
So I have made those two updates. And likely I will be making an update on the capital train project as well to show the current price as well. So I just have it. If you have any other questions or any other concerns, we just wanted to give you this another opportunity just so that when it comes in next Monday, hopefully everything should be ironed out. So
does anyone have any additional questions or concerns about anything? Just want to make sure CEO Becker with the ActDev work that we're doing that's adequately funded going forward. You know, I think probably hard to say right now exactly what we need, but you know, seems to be a focus and it may require some more funding going forward at some point in time.
Mayor Barkley, just so council's aware, the Economic Development Advisory Group met last Thursday. They had the preliminary results of presentation from our support team on our ActDev strategy. And we're expecting the full strategy and draft to be presented to the committee around mid-January and then onto council for review, hopefully for approval. So we don't have, yeah, we'll certainly have to wait and see Mayor Barkley on that. I guess if there's other requirements up to the mill rate bylaw, there's perhaps you can reconsider a budget adjustment at that given time. Until you see that full document and council's eyes on it, well, it's really hard to determine if we should be exploring additional adjustments. Certainly Megan and I will speak prior to Monday and see if there's other potential that we should bring back to you immediately.
Thank you. So Director Vickers, when will you, you'll have an idea about assessments?
Mayor Barkley, that will come late February. Yeah. I'll know I'll get the full assessment roll.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay. All right, well, if there's no questions. Oh, Councillor
So
Bates
the
is
presentation we just had, was that not a $90,000 increase?
Mayor Barkley through to Councillor Bates, yes. So they did indicate that the price that they originally gave us was I think back in April or May. So now that is the updated rates.
That would have to reflect in the budget if we decide to do that. And
yes, that will be updated for next Monday. Absolutely.
Any other questions? Councillor Wing?
Yeah, Mayor Barkley, just a comment. In the work that I've been reviewing in the last little while, asset management and energy management are still pretty innovative, pretty new ways of thinking for councils and communities. And so I know sometimes it feels like, or it might feel like it's a big bite, but I think that that's our job. I think that both of those bodies of work that our administration has done is important for us to understand the future implications of it and dig into what that will look like. So I think it benefits us in the end. It's just it's a big chunk, but it's an important big chunk. Thank you.
Okay, nothing else then. Okay, thank you, Director Vickers. That was easy. At least until next Monday comes. So we'll move on to
Mayor Barkley.
Yes.
Could I have a motion just for you to accept my report as information?
Oh, sure, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
you. Could somebody please make that motion?
Mayor Barkley, I'll move that council approves the 2022 budget review report as information.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Okay, we'll move into correspondence and information. So we can just go through these things. I guess through to maybe Director Jenkins, or I have some questions regarding the age-friendly minutes that came out. There was some suggestion in there about a potential survey, Ipsos survey, and I guess being somewhat familiar with that ad hoc committee and all the work that was done and all the information that's out there through Alberta government and other organizations. I don't know, I'm wondering if maybe that committee should look at doing asset mapping, because I think there's so many assets have been developed in the community, even over the last couple of years, with the community partners in action, with the primary care network, with the recreational therapist, with Karen, FCSS, and you know, transportation, and looking at the, I know when we started that ad hoc committee, we looked at the 8 domains of age-friendly initiative from WHO, and we chunked off maybe 5 of them. And the Alberta government also has a checklist on if you want to be an official age-friendly community, there's a checklist to go through. So I'm not sure another survey would be necessary or warranted, because I don't think there was a great
And I can give you a bit of background. So there was a brief discussion at the committee. And then they looked back through the needs assessment and the community report from the Health Canada grant. And they did come to the conclusion that they didn't feel that another survey was going to give them anything that they didn't already have some knowledge on at the time, so that it's not something that they're currently looking at.
Yeah, I think there's
pursuing
a ton of information that with that ad hoc committee, people came in every month and gave reports and stuff. And yeah, it's great to see this committee going and up and running.
Mayor Barkley, I can give an update when we do a roundtable about that. Director Jenkins is said, yes, we did look at the the survey, and the reason that we thought that in addition to that original Ipsos was there anything that we didn't capture or that wasn't captured in that original survey. And when we looked at all the different reports and reports backs and the feedback and the surveys, the committee felt that we have enough information to start our action plan so that we can obtain certification for our age-friendly communities. So there was quite a discussion around that here this past week.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anybody on council have any questions about the correspondence? I think probably all been through it on the weekend and okay, then I will just have someone make a motion, please, that we accept the correspondence as information.
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceros. All in favor? Thank you. And we'll go to round table. So we are starting today with Councillor Bates.
I got lots. So since our council meeting on the 22nd, well, we did the budget marathon. On November the 29th, had a Mountain View Regional Water Commission tour and budget meeting. We were able to accommodate the mayor and the CAO and operations director and foreman Terry Sangate on the tour. So I think that was informative to everybody. In the budget meeting, some of the primary things they're embarking on asset management, not per se as we are, but they have $300 million in excess of in assets, and they were allocating approximately $300,000 a year to reserves. They've been running for 40 odd years and expanding. And so obviously there's a lot of things, and some of the things we probably saw on tour are becoming outdated and need work. In the past term, about 3 months ago, they moved to appoint an operations manager, Rick Blair, and I think he's brought a lot of practical plant management to that organization and is going to help steer them in a direction to be more sustainable, because I think where they were headed, they weren't 100% sustainable. Future government grants, they are projecting, not unlike us, to be less. And in fact, one of the things that was mentioned kind of in between lines was some of their previous management had met at some point with government officials, and they've been told to try and either raise their rates or try and get their members to actually dip into some of their MSI to help fund the water. So it just gives you that flavor of how everything's tightening up. Yeah, the intake at the plant is probably one of the things most needing repair at this point. They're hoping and more or less counting on the fact that they should be able to line it because it's actually leaking at this point. Replacement would be a quantum leap in what it might cost them. So they're counting on being able to reline it. The proposed water rates that they had given us previously represented about a 9%, 3%, and 3% increase over the next 3 years. And during that meeting and coming out with first reading, it was suggested to soften the first year to 6%. And but we can probably count on another 6 the following year and then 3. So the $1.86 is the number they came out with for next year's budget, which I think we had $1.93. Erica, is that correct? $1.93 is what they had projected. So we're meeting this week to finalize that water rate. Yeah. And my next meeting was December 1st with another commission, the Central Alberta Regional Waste Management Commission. Now, most people have probably never heard of that thing, and you won't hear about it a lot. It's 2 meetings a year. And what it is, in essence, is we were part of a group that had a landfill that was closed in 2003 after 4 years of operation. That using it were us, Red Deer County, Penhold, Bowden, Elnora, and Delburn. Quite an unlikely group. So what we are compelled to do by Alberta Environment is groundwater monitoring and removing the leachate that comes out of that landfill at least through this decade. And yeah, Councillor Rehberger was our man on this commission. I remember him giving this kind of a dissertation a couple of times. So at our meeting, we did approve our next 3-year quote on the groundwater monitoring and just a minute. And oh, right. And then the other major expense is leachate removal, and that's totally dependent on rainfall. So last year was extremely light, the leachate removal. And our assessment, they run kind of similar to what we do. They don't make money. So because our assessment had been quite high, it's going to drop for this year, but we still have to assume that it might go back up. Yeah, so I believe 2021 was 12,700. 2022 is going to be 5,557. So it's a significant cut, but they're projecting 23 and 24 back in the 11.6 range. So, and this week we have MPC and that budget meeting and Muni 101 in Three Hills. That's all. Just very
wonderful.
Short.
No, it was good. Thank you. Councillor Heistad.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was away this week, so I want to thank Councillor Harrison for looking after the age-friendly meeting. And yeah, it's been a crazy week, and just was at my convention, so I was elected into my role. I think most of you knew that. So that's what I was concentrating on. I wasn't concentrating on my municipal job, which is another job, right? So, but it's nice to be back with this council, very friendly people, and the debate that I enjoyed or I didn't enjoy, I got through it, and just reflecting on the work that we're doing here is very positive. Not that the work that I do outside of this job isn't, but it's different politics. So thanks. It's a pleasure to be back.
Okay, well, congratulations. And Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. And yeah, it was quite a busy week last week. On Monday, I wrote the SD, or took the SDAB workshop. That was about a 6 or 7 hour course that was put on by Brownlee, the legal people. And I certainly learned a lot. I wish I'd had it before I was on MPC. It would have, yeah, and we'll just leave that at that. But I did pass. So I'm ready for my first hearing. Hopefully we don't have any hearings, but I'm certainly ready. I understand we got one coming up, but I won't be sitting on it. Yeah, that was very, very informative course. And like I say, I wish that training would have happened prior to MPC. So second meeting that I had, we talked about the age-friendly committee, and we briefly went over a little bit of that. We had a very good meeting. Going back to the Ipsos survey, we did have quite a discussion around the results of all the surveys and the reports that we've got. And the committee felt that we have enough that we can start to amass that information and data to start to begin our action plan. And we did spend some time earlier, and I'll go over with Councillor Heistad on, because he is the primary on that committee and sort of where we sit. We're going to spend the $6,000 from the that we've got through the Health Canada grant. And Karen and Sandra will be working with the ladies from the partners group there on working, and they'll be bringing back to the committee a work plan for that $6,000 for our December meeting, or no, January meeting. I'm sorry. Yeah. We had a presentation by Rebecca and Wendy on the men's shed, and that's a program that it's for men that we get together, and it's for fellowship, and that we can work on projects together. And they were looking at the historical village site as kicking that off, because we do have a number of facilities there that could accommodate to that. And the group there is always restoring something. So they felt that that would be a good fit to at least start with. So they did present to the other committee the same night, the historical committee, which Councillor Highstead is also the primary on for the town of Innisfail. And it was well received by the Historical Society. So that evening we, I'll just speak on behalf of Councillor Highstead, that I was representing you that night. So we talked about the delegation of the men's. We're looking at, we have a new secretary there in Sherry Griffiths, and she's really interested in history of the area, the community and surrounding area. And she's volunteering to digitize all her photos. Yeah, it's going to be quite a project. And I think they'll be coming to FCSS for some grant money to help with that. So you'll probably see an application. But we have photos, we have boxes of stuff piled here, there, and everywhere. And she just wants to bring, and they've started to bring it all together to digitize it, so that we do have a record if we ever have a fire, a flood, or just over time, you know, getting that stuff. So we'll be able to capture our history. Sherry's also been working with the Catholic school there, St. Marguerite, on getting more involvement from the school at our historical village. Now they're going to Heritage Park and to look at what's going on down there. And the new principal is quite keen on bringing together her school and the museum. It's right across the street. There's no busing costs. And it's local history. So Sherry is really stepped up, and she's been dealing with the principal there. So I think that's quite a positive. And of course, we're looking at jobs, positions for the summer. It's not that far away. I know it's -20 today, but we're going to be, looking at grass here in another 3 months. So we are working on job descriptions. Yeah, it goes by pretty quick. As you get older, Councillor Highstead, it goes by quicker. So we're working on job descriptions. We're looking at an office manager, and getting away from an actual museum manager, but the office manager looking after the office, and a lead hand and 2 summer students to work on the grounds. And so once that is, we've sort of developed that framework, then I'm certain Councillor Highstead will bring that back. We are looking at upgrading the power, or putting the power into the fire hall. And we talk about train and energy efficient. We are looking at LED lights and setting that up so that it is going to be energy efficient. And the question that I would have is there any way that maybe, and this is not for today, but is there any way that we could bring the museum's buildings into some of this work that we're doing with train? And I'll just leave that food for some. So, what else? And then we were off December the 2nd to the Parkland Foundation, and that was done via Zoom due to the weather that we had the previous evening. A very good meeting. We had an election of officers, and the new chairperson is Connie Huzelman, and the vice chair is Sandra Gamble from Bowden, two quite capable ladies. The good news story is all the facilities Bethany Care has around in Innisfail here are all full. They have waiting lists, so all their facilities. I guess it's sort of a good and bad situation. If you're wanting to get into it, it's bad, but from a foundation point of view, it's good that everything is full. A balanced budget. The staff really went above, much the same as our staff, went above and beyond to keep that budget balanced. So there won't be any increases in requisitions. And of course, operational updates, you know, COVID is always an issue, but the staff are managing that. There was a purchase, or there will be a purchase of a water softener for Autumn Grove. They were finding that when they built the new facility, that the water that we have in Innisfail is quite hard, and the kitchen hardware that they put in, dishwashers and that kind of thing, the hard water is really, really hard on them, and it's gumming everything up. So the maintenance was pretty high. So there will be a water softener purchase for that. So COLA, COLA has been, there was a vote of 1% for COLA at the phone for the staff. And then, no, I'm not done yet. I still have RD mug, which was also done later that day on December the 2nd, also done by Zoom. So we had a really good orientation from Keith Ryder and the new executive director. And it was basically just an orientation for the new members. And there's been quite a turnover on the board, not on the board, but in the membership. And at the annual general meeting, which is going to be in January, that's when they will be taking nominations for the executive board. And it looks like there may be an opportunity for new members on that board. It looks like there's been quite a few moving on, retiring, resigning. So we'll see in January. Which brings us to the end. And this week we're doing 3 days or 2 days in Three Hills at the Munis 101. So, and I suppose we'll talk about carpooling somewhere throughout the meeting or after the meeting. So thank you very much, Mayor Barkley.
Well, thank you, Councillor Maceras.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. It's a good thing you were so busy, Councillor Harrison, because I don't have much to report on. I attended the Parkland Community Planning Services Committee last week, and just a couple of things of note: that officers were elected, and we planned the time for the AGM. We've got the MPC tomorrow, and Muni training, and some unofficial service that I provided for the town, and that was going to the fire hall and getting dressed up as a firefighter. And Councillor Harrison, after that report that you provided, I had a call from Sunset Manor from one of the women who lives there to report to the council that 2 of the ladies have had their electric wheelchairs taken away. And she wondered if council could do anything about it. So I'll have them call you.
Thank you, Councillor Maceras. Councillor Dunham.
We were reminded of the process when it comes to visitors. So yeah, we'll talk offline.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. All right. So on Wednesday, I attended the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board training course, same one that Councillor Harrison was at. The two lawyers who presented from Reynolds, Mirth, Richards, and Farmer out of Edmonton did a great job. There was a lot of information packed into that many hours. It was unfortunate that they only released the course material 15 minutes previous to it, because there's a 175-page document that I would have loved to have gotten my hands on a few days previous, but I do have it now. Thank you, Kara. Appreciate that. The course covered a broad range of topics that are necessary for appointed members like myself and Councillor Harrison to have knowledge of, so that we can actually participate in the hearings. They did introductions to overviews of actually what the SDAB is, the establishment composition of it, the Alberta planning framework, subdivision and development in Alberta and how it works, types of appeals, guiding principles, then the appeal procedures, roles, and responsibilities. I also learned several dozen new acronyms that I hope to be able to use correctly in the coming years. My sister actually is a lawyer, or was a lawyer with the city of Edmonton. And on the first break, I contacted her and she was in municipal law. And she said, yeah, welcome to municipal law. So that was interesting. Really enjoyed it. And I as well passed, which was very nice. On Thursday, December 2nd, I attended my first Community Economic Development Advisory Group meeting. I was very excited to attend that. We had a committee orientation and we're caught up on the previous meetings. Eric Burton, as CEO Becker mentioned earlier, from Factor 5 presented a preliminary CED strategic and tactical plan. They did an overview of the activities since the previous meeting and some background research. And then they got into some of the research highlights, the strategic narrative, the vision and mission statements that they developed. They looked at the economic development strategy lens, strategic objectives, and then a lot of strategic recommendations. And one of the things that I think that we all talked about afterwards is that now all of us on the committee have to kind of go away and really look at what the top priorities are, and then also the CEO Becker and the administration to look at the capacity of the town to do a number of them. But yeah, it was very interesting, and I think there's a lot of exciting things in there. It's just figuring out which ones we can achieve in a finite amount of time and look to the future, the next few years. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. You guys have all been busy. So, of course, we all participated in budget. I found that to be a very interesting process. And so I'd like to thank you, CEO Becker, and your team for providing us with that work and being as responsive to our questions as you were. That was a truly interesting process. I attended earlier or late last week a virtual presentation to the Alberta Health Services Central Zone municipal leaders. As we've discussed in the past week since the election, the demographics, of course, that Alberta Health Services are basing their programs and services on see a population in this region at 500,000. So they don't divide their central region into two, as Donna Allard was talking about with their departments, but Alberta Health Services looks at 500,000 people. So 30 acute care hospitals, 1 provincial mental health facility, 38 community health centers, and 12 primary care networks within that region. So it's a significant machine that operates relative to our health services. I think that's a significant, I think it was a significant presentation for all of us as we anticipate the impact of our planning and potential growth, and seek affirmation from Alberta Health Services and the provincial government on the stability or perhaps even the changing purposes of our hospital and healthcare for our citizens. So I think it's important that we keep an eye on that. Alberta Health Services is predicting that the central zone will grow by 24% in the next 10 years. Of which 17% will be seniors. So again, it's just, you know, it behooves us to keep that in front of us. Continued recruitment and retention of staff, qualified staff, further conversation with community partners, residents and families, and highlighted opportunities for collaboration were presented as their next step. So that was a very interesting meeting. I also attended the virtual CAPE Fall General Meeting. Last week. Economic development, as I've told you, is an area of interest for me. And prior to COVID and prior to retiring, I was involved in the project that actually resulted in the MNP labor market study that was discussed at the meeting. So I was appreciative of knowing that that work continued through COVID, and they've actually completed it. And Central Alberta has some good data and knowledge to help move us all forward in the coming years. So I think that's a good, some good infrastructure for Cape to really be able to dig into. Technology enabled remote work and employees' remote work arrangements is no surprise to us. That's information that's existing in our own economic development report. Attraction and retention of employees into Central Alberta was discussed, certainly is on Cape's radar. And recommendations coming from that meeting include employer training, with champions being local industry associations and chambers of commerce. Promotion and utilization of government support, so training subsidies, champions being economic development agencies, again, chambers of commerce, and post-secondaries. And guess what? We've got 2 of them within, half an hour of each way. And certainly collaboration, again, with post-secondaries, industry associations, and industry itself. I very much enjoyed, and thank you for the invitation to attend the town Christmas dinner. It was lovely to see friends and neighbors again, but I definitely appreciated the service awards that were presented that evening. So thank you to the organizing committee and directors Jenkins and Vickers for their work on putting the event together. Next time, be sure council eats first. We had some fun trying to figure out what some of those songs were, let me tell you. Yesterday, this was not a council thing, but I did attend the Eagles home game yesterday. Innisfail Eagles, of course, are the senior men's AAA hockey team in Innisfail that are currently playing in the senior AA Ranchland League, as they prepare to represent Innisfail and Alberta in the Allen Cup, which is being held in the spring of 2022. So they are going to the national championships. They just, of course, COVID allowing them, if there's no restrictions that will prevent that. So I just wanted to mention it because I think it's a significant event coming up for one of our local teams and something that we should be aware of. The next home game is Saturday, December the 18th, so a week and a half. And they always look forward to having good fan support. Just about done. Chamber of Commerce begins strategic planning process tomorrow. So tomorrow the board will review the current plan, and then they have a facilitated process next week with the facilitator coming from the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. So I'm looking forward to that activity. And then of course, MPC tomorrow and Munis 101 in Three Hills with the rest of you on Thursday and Friday.
Thank you. So since the last meeting, I attended budget deliberations, as did all of you. I had the water treatment plant tour with Councillor Bates on the 29th. Participated in the AHS Central Zone Leadership meeting on November 30th, the Central Alberta Economic Partnership Fall General Meeting on December the 1st. I did a presentation to 4 grade 6 classes on December the 2nd via Google Meets. Thank you, Megan. That was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed that. And also had the Community Economic Development Advisory Group this past week as well. And I will just echo Councillor Wing's comments. Thank you to the staff for the Christmas gathering on Friday evening. That was a lot of fun. And I'd also like to say huge kudos to the staff, to Director Kennedy Operations. I know an SOS went out on Saturday morning because Kevin Graham came with his horses and the streets were too slippery. So Saturday morning, within a few minutes, the sanding truck was out there sanding the streets so that they could have their safe horse and carriage ride. So thank you so much for doing that on such short notice. It's greatly appreciated and reflects wonderfully on the town. And yes, I did see Councillor Maceros, who could be our next volunteer firefighter. If anybody wants to see a video, $5. No, I'm just kidding. And attending Munis 101 this week on Thursday. I do have the Wastewater Commission on Friday. So that is it, that for roundtable. So we're now going to be going in camera. I'll have someone make a motion to move in camera, please.
I'll make that motion to go on camera.
Thank you, Councillor Hystad. All in favor?